always happy to come back to ASJA and connect with y'all and help y'all get to the next level. So as Melissa talked about, we're talking about having your most future resilient career. Unfortunately, I have some bad news for you. A lot of us are running the wrong race. We're thinking that if we master the different technologies, that will keep us safe, or worse, we're going to get on all the technologies, use them, and that somehow is going to protect our job. Unfortunately, that's not going to work. The best way that we can move forward is the way that we could have moved forward in the past, and that is making sure that we do the long way, the trusted way, the human way, as far as connecting with the people we want to serve and communicating with them in the way that we want to. This is important in a few different ways, but the main way is that there are individuals, there are entities, there are trillion-dollar companies that actually want to take our voice, take our ideas, mimic what we do, what we've done for decades in my case, and some cases for y'all. They want to take that and then try to duplicate our sauce, as a good friend of mine says. But they will fail at that as long as we're actually true to how we create and connect with other people. Now, I've been in the tech industry for a little while, been a tech advocate, and I've also been a journalist and an author and a public speaker for a few decades too. Been involved with ASJA for, oh my gosh, I'm not going to say how long. And so having one foot in one and one foot in the other helps me realize that there are three main tenets that will help us build a future resilient career. Number one, we have to understand that technology should be doing what we will not or cannot do. Number two, technology will not take your job unless you're not doing it. And finally, number three, technology is a golden opportunity for us, perhaps the biggest opportunity that we'll have in our career lifetimes. Now, they might sound a little bit contradictory, a little bit odd, but trust me, the puzzle pieces will fit together once I'm done talking. So number one, technology should be used for what we cannot or will not do. So about a decade ago, I had a book called The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur. It became a bestseller. Before I did that, though, I went to a lot of major publishing companies, some of them that I already written bestsellers for, and they didn't understand what I was trying to do. What I was trying to do is talk about this new breed, this new energy of entrepreneurs, of creators, who are side hustlers, who are solopreneurs, what I call non-traditional entrepreneurs, trying to make an impact in the world when they already had a life. I used to live in Silicon Valley, and a lot of people that were making the big exits, which means you get a lot of money for your company, or a lot of people that were trying to make a difference, they didn't actually have a life. The thing was that I had a very rich life when I became an entrepreneur. I actually became an entrepreneur at the exact same time that I became primary caregiver to my wife and I's first son. He was 4 months old when my wife went back to her traditional job. And by the time I was done with the second startup, it was right after he turned 2. The second startup was called Cuddler, which connected people for hugs. And if you're familiar with my work, you know I talk about technology and intimacy all the time. So it's kind of like a Tinder or a Grindr or all those old school apps, which are considered old school for the new generation, except it was platonic. So it connected literally people for hugs. We had 250,000 users. We were the #1 app in the world twice in 2014. And then 2015, we were on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. And we sold the company shortly after that. The book came out of that struggle, that challenge, and coming up with 21 tenets for other people like yourself to make an impact in the world without sacrificing everything. It was a wonderful run. It was the first book of my independent imprint. Like I said, the regular publishers were not rocking with it at all. And with that work, that started this second act of my career, which I'm in now. Fast forward a few years later, and it's December of 2020. And a lot of us probably remember where we were at that moment. It was almost the first full year of living in this pandemic. Now, my wife and I had 2 kids. I believe they were 7 and 5 at the time, because the eldest one is about 2.5 years older than the youngest. We're virtual schooling. I remember our youngest one was 5 because he was starting kindergarten, but of course he was doing it from the comfort or discomfort of our home. And I felt very alone, as a lot of us did. Not just alone as far as like physically alone, because my wife works in medicine, she's a doctor, so we weren't playing with anything. So we were very much isolated. So it wasn't just the physical part of it. It was also the mental part of it. There was no in-person ASJA conference, which, as I said, I've been involved with for years. There was no TED conference, which I've been a TED speaker 4 times over, as Marlisa said. Suddenly, there was no TED conference. There was no gathering or marketplace of ideas, as Adam Smith and other people have said. There was no exchange. There was no moving back and forth. Worst of all, by that time, I became a business coach. And a lot of people that I was coaching didn't know how to make income. Some of them were public speakers, obviously weren't on the road anymore. Some of them were freelancers, media budgets, as you understand, dropped. And there are people that even wanted to work with me that couldn't afford to work with me. So I thought, how can I build something that's free to the public, that's accessible, that would give game, as we say nowadays, to the different people, these non-traditional entrepreneurs, that's different than what I did before, because I can't be on the road anymore. So I started the Bring Your Worst show. It's at youtube.com/Brown Damon. It started December 23rd, whatever the equinox was of 2020. And it was a lot of hard work, but it was also an opportunity for me to give back and also to connect with people. The first couple of years, I had a couple hundred subscribers. This year, starting around New Year's, it started to go up. And just recently, it hit about 15,000 subscribers. Now, I share that number because for a lot of y'all, and some of y'all are my mentors in this, once you change platforms, the game kind of changes. For instance, you could be a long-time freelancer, have a big name, and then suddenly you start blogging and you have a whole different audience. You could be a public speaker, a business coach, an author, and then you start a TV show, and then suddenly there's 15,000 people that I talk to them all the time. They've never heard of the Bite-Sized Entrepreneur or any work that came before 2020 when I started the show. My point is that I understood that I was serving, but there was a whole back catalog of things. Remember, I have my own imprint, so it's my intellectual property. That's a whole different keynote right there. So I can do with it what I want to. Around that same time when the numbers are going up, January of this year, I started looking into AI. Remember, I did 2 startups, including working on the tech for Cuddler. So this is native land for me. And I discovered something called Midjourney AI. And what it is basically a platform where you can type in a description. They call it a prompt, still very tech heavy. So let me know if you need a translation for any of this, but they call it a prompt. And when you type in the prompt, then it goes to the computer and 30 seconds later, it gives you 4 variations of whatever you said. Salvador Dali swims down the Nile River with a crocodile on his head. 30 seconds later, you got 4 variants coming out of there. It is like magic. As many tech people have said before me, the best tech feels like magic when it's new. This stuff feels like magic. I'm playing around with it, doing some late nights, getting the boys to bed, and then messing around with it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but as a lot of us can relate to, sometimes we find things that we're curious about, but we don't know how we're going to apply it. That's such an important lesson, particularly when it comes to technology. That's built my whole career. I'm sure it's built some of yours. So I'm messing around with it one late night, and it hits me. What if I took the best-selling book from 2016, the audio book that I self-produced shortly after that, I want to say early 2017, took the audio book and then used the most evocative visual passages from it and put that into Midjourney AI. And I used that to illustrate this book that's been sitting on the shelf for, what's it, 6, 7, 8 years. Math isn't my strength, but it's been a while. And so that's what I did. I spent several late nights putting it all together. And suddenly there's this 2-hour program taking this old audiobook that already had its time in the sun, bringing it into now, and then using Midjourney, this technology, to create something new. Not only was it some way to serve my audience, and it's available right there on the Bring Your Worst show right now, and getting feedback from the audience, but also having a proof of concept, ideally for other authors, particularly people are my age or older, to say that we can use this technology to not only refurbish these big ideas that came from us, from humanity, but also to bring it to a whole new audience. And so those 15,000 subscribers, most of them had never heard of the Bite-Sized Entrepreneur, unless I happened to mention it on a TV show. Now, my background is not art. I have several graphic artists in my family, including my dad. The gene didn't come to me. Like a lot of us, it got mutated somehow. And instead of me doing paintings, instead, I'm using my words to describe these beautiful pictures. Technology was doing something that I could not or would not do. Literally incapable of it with my skill set right now. Now, technology is a few things that, the reverse side works too. In other words, there's certain things that we will do or I can do that tech can't or won't do. For instance, technology is not a journalist. As we figured out, if you've been missing that whole thing, again, I'm involved in the tech stuff. CNET and other major publications, major platforms, particularly in my areas, have been caught over the past year using ChatGPT and other language platforms to actually write their articles. Now, the question is how they got caught. They got caught because, number two, we realized that modern AI and modern technology, they are not reliable narrators, nor are they reliable sources. There's a term, actually, a tech term now, called hallucinations. Now, I live in Las Vegas, so it makes me think of the desert. And it's like being out in the desert, dying of thirst, and you suddenly see an oasis. And of course, you get there and you think about the Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny cartoons that I grew up with. Suddenly you go to drink it and it's a bunch of sand. That's what AI is doing right now. The latest ones of it. This is 2023. I'm not talking about last year or the year before. So suddenly Saddam Hussein started World War III in 1995 because he got a hold of weapons of mass destruction and blew up half of the world. Random stuff. We don't know where it comes from. These are called hallucinations. Instead, technology is more like Wikipedia. It's a place where you can start. It's a place where you can get general ideas, but it's not a place to finish. We are the finishers. We're the ones that do the double checking. We're the ones that know the reality of things. Technology is a tool. It does what we cannot or will not do. So that's number one. Number two, technology will not take your job unless you're not doing your job. Now, many moons ago, I will not say how long, but you can look at my LinkedIn. I was a young grad student at Northwestern getting my master's in magazine publishing. Now, I did quite a bit. I started my journalism career when I was like 14. So you can do the math from that. But I was still pretty young, as most of us were there. So there's a lot of things of the real world I had to figure out. Running a college newspaper is not the same, as you know, as running the Washington Post. And I swear the bane of all our wise professors' existence, at least the thorn in their craw, I think that's how you term it, was us asking, do we really have to get on the L train, which is the elevated train in Chicago, and go all the way down there to interview the subject? Or can we just give them a phone call? Can we phone it in? Now, if you're of my generation or younger, or actually I should say of older, you know the power of the telephone, right? Whether you're dialing it with the rotary thing or the early age cell phones, which are just coming into vogue when I was in grad school. So you can call up a subject, let's say a subject that owns a bakery. And there was so many little stories in Chicago. Subject that owns a bakery, and you're calling them up in the middle of their busy day. You would know if they're being generous with their time or if they didn't want to share their story. You could hear if they were frustrated, or you can hear if they were smiling. You can hear when people are smiling on the phone. I'm sure some of you are nodding because you can tell. You know when to ask the next question and to make it longer, to elaborate, or when to shut up and let the silence be the next question. And they volunteer the next piece of information. There's so much stuff we can get through the phone. But then you compare that to it being in the middle of a Chicago winter. I know some Chicagoans are here, so you know the deal. And you're on the L train, elevated platform. I don't know why they made it elevated, but you're doing 2 or 3 stops. And every time you do a new train, like I remember mine used to be from the brown line to the red line to perhaps the green line if you're going out west, whatever. You're doing all that. Going through the cold, you get off the train and you see a bustling or maybe a sleepy neighborhood. You might see Ukrainians, you might see Puerto Ricans, you might see Polish folks. Are they milling about or are they separated? Are they in a hurry? Do they have suits on? Do they have like the Dickies on? Are they going to a construction site? What are they doing? Are they little kids or are they mostly older folks? Does it seem like a depressed neighborhood or does it seem vibrant and alive? What are you smelling? And then by the time you get to the bakery, then you can see if people are milling about or if the bakery is quiet. And you might even see the sweat on the proprietor's brow and see if they're stressed or if they're proud or if they're excited or if they're worried, or like most creators and entrepreneurs, if they're all 4. And you might even smell something and it smells like a croissant, but it smells different than the Parisian croissants that you smelled before. It smells a little bit more sugary, which might be closer to, say, the Polish history. And that's before you even did the interview. Now, if you're feature writers like myself, I interview a lot of people for a living, whether it's for my show or when you do business coaching, as some of you coaches know, that's also a form of interviewing. You realize the power of those details. Now, I graduated, thankfully, from Northwestern. It was a rough ride. And right after I graduated, then the same discussion happened, but with new players. Then it became, do I have to call these people? Or can I just send a really, really good email? That would save a lot of trouble. Do I have to email these folks? Or can I just hit them up on like social media? There's a new thing called LinkedIn. I can send them a message through that, and I bet you it'll be a lot faster. There's another thing called Facebook, but I'm not sure if they're using that yet. Am I going to go and send them a DM, which is what the cool people called it later? Or am I going to shoot them a text? Because I have their cell phone number. Why do I have to talk to them? The discussion now, of course, is, do I have to text them? Or can I let this new tech platform, which is free to us currently, or at least mostly free, why can't I let it do the work? Technology cannot read a room. Technology cannot understand the pain of an entrepreneur and the pride that's in their face. No matter how much facial recognition software we got, there's something soul to soul that happens when you see the pain or the pride or all of those in someone's eyes. And it can't actually smell whether a croissant or a pastry is from the Champs-Élysées or it's from some part of Poland. It can't do that. Now, what technology can do, though, which is excellent at it, it's always been able to do this well, is give us the illusion that we're doing our job when we're not actually doing our job. Technology is excellent at that. So number one, when it comes to technology, you have to understand you should use it for what you will not and cannot do. Number two, technology will not take your job unless you're not doing your job. And number three, technology is a golden opportunity. It's an opportunity like a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or the Willy Wonka movie, depending on what generation you're part of. It's the golden ticket that's going to get us to the dance. Now, what it can do is modify the work that we're already doing. When I was first a struggling author, trying to get my first major book published, ended up taking 5 years. It's a whole nother story. Someone once told me that it takes so long and we should have so much pride in our work because whether we're doing fiction or nonfiction, whether we're doing a sci-fi novel or ghostwriting something, our fingerprint, our energy, our soul, our humanity is in every piece of work that we do. I've done 26 books. As Melissa talked about, I have my 27th coming out later on this year. And every single one of them have a piece of me in it. That's something that AI cannot duplicate. We can get better technology to get it out there, but it can't do me. Technology also cannot build communities as we build communities. I have a newsletter that comes out every Wednesday. In fact, it came out this morning, 5:55 a.m. at joindamon.me. It's a free newsletter. I've been doing it, I think I can say decades now. So a long time, at least 15, 20 years. At one period of time, email was a new technology. Remember, 20 years ago, email was new. Let's think about that. Now it's a vehicle for me to build these communities of non-traditional entrepreneurs like yourself, to build my coaching practice, to have my book imprint with the books that are right behind me. I'm able to do that using technology. But ChatGPT or another platform isn't writing the newsletter. I'm not using Midjourney AI or Stable Diffusion to do these different images per se. Instead, it's me cultivating the community and then me using the technology to actually build a community more, to find more of us rather than to replace us. At the end of the day, it's about us putting more humanity into the work that we do. And that's what was going to allow us to win, to create for another day. But that was the case 10 years ago when everyone had to be on every social media platform. You guys remember that? 15, 20 years ago, everyone needed to have a blog. Do you guys remember that? There's nothing wrong with those, but those are all tools. And as many blogs as we had, as many social media platforms we were on, if we focused on that, we end up missing the big picture, which is our humanity. Seth Godin told me about something called wabi-sabi. Now, I'm into food, so it's not wasabi, just be clear, but it's wabi, one word, sabi, the second word. Now, I'm rusty with my Japanese. Please don't ask me to say any, but it roughly means beautifully human or perfectly imperfect. Now, according to Seth Godin, this term comes mostly from the Japanese tea ceremonies. Like I said, I spent a little bit of time in Japan, but I've never been to a tea ceremony. I've never had that honor. But it's this ritual. It sometimes takes hours where people have like the garb on and you pour it a certain way. And it's just this fanfare, this beauty. What they use to deliver the tea, and even that sounds disrespectful, but what they use to deliver the tea is really important. So here in the States, you can go to IKEA. If you're really fancy, you can go to Restoration Hardware, or you can go to Williams-Sonoma if they're still around. All the fancy stuff, get the best china, and it's perfectly even. Even if you end up using the newest technology, it'll keep your tea at the perfect temperature. But compare that to you sitting down for one of these ceremonies, and you go look at your teacup, and it has a crack in it, maybe a little chip. And you learn that that chip happened from the 12th emperor of Japan, who lived in Edo, which was the original name for Tokyo. And it happened when he dropped the cup by accident. That's wabi-sabi. It's not this generic churn out thing. It's those things that make us beautifully human. Those are the mistakes. Those are the wrinkles. Many, many years ago, I actually was up for a full-time position. It was through a headhunter. They really wanted to work with me. And it was a tempting offer. Now, if you're familiar with my work, if you've worked with me as a coach, if you've read any of my books, you know the amount of traditional jobs I've had, I can probably count on one finger. So this is a tempting thing. Great company, great opportunity. And they're offering way more money. You see me stuttering, more money than I've ever seen in my life, at least at that period of time. So my books are called Bring Your Worth. That's my imprint. My mug says Bring Your Worth. My shirt says Bring Your Worth. So you know I'm not going to take the first offer. I can't do that. I knew what I was bringing to the table. So I had a conversation with my would-be boss, great guy. And I said, hey, thank you for this generous offer. I can see that you guys respect what I'm bringing to the table, how I'm showing up, and the work that I'm doing. So thank you. It's very generous. And also, I just sold my startup. I just finished my second TED Talk. And there's all these different things that I'm doing, all these businesses I want to create, that with this full-time position, I know based on the contract, these are going to have to be put to the side. So if you're comfortable with it, I'd love to do a counteroffer over the next day that might be more reflective of what I'm bringing to the table. And also, frankly, what I'm leaving behind. He paused for a second, really quick guy. So it's just for a second, one Mississippi, and then he got it. He says, "Thank you, Damon. And I appreciate your honesty. I know that you know your worth. And so do we. That's why we came and sought you out. Happy to take a look at your counteroffer. And I'll go ahead and look at it and I'll share it with the team if it seems appropriate. But before you do that, though, there's just two things to understand about our business culture. Number one thing is that I and we are not used car salesmen. We're not going to haggle back and forth. The price that we gave you, as far as your salary and the bonuses including it, that's at the top because we feel like you're worth the top. This is the top of the range for our company. If this was an MBA contract, you'd be at your cap. You guys are the salary caps. You're pretty much at the top of it. Maybe we can add $1 to it, but that's pretty much it. And so understand that we can have this negotiation later after your first, second year. Maybe based on performance, we can move you into a different category. But based on HR and all these other things, you're pretty much at the top. Again, you can send me a counteroffer. I'm happy to take a look at it and then pass it on to the team. The second part, though, is even more important. As a culture here at this company, we value all our employees and all our staff. That's why we're generous with the salaries, including your potential one. That's why we're generous with the bonus. So we're generous with the times off. We're very generous. But we do have one cultural rule. Whatever we give, whatever we invest in you for that annual salary, you will have to bring in 10x or 10 times that business. In other words, if you're given $100,000, that calendar year, you're expected to bring in $1 million worth of business. If you're bringing in 200,000, 2 million, and you guys can do the math. And he just got quiet. And I got quiet. And I paused for probably like 2-3 seconds. I said, wow, thank you. You know, I'm really into business culture. I love this insight about your organization, and I'm happy to lead the team in that kind of philosophy. And I'm going to go and sleep on it because I'm not someone that makes rash decisions. But based on what the feedback that you've given me, let's look towards next steps with the assumption that I'm going to take the offer. See, the key thing that I learned and still remember to this day is that you can charge whatever the hell you want. I charge a lot for my one-on-one coaching. I charge $30 for Build From Now, my book that came out a couple of years ago, which is a lot for independent book. But I made darn sure that for my target audience, as soon as they open Build From Now, by the time the first chapter is done, they've gotten their 300 plus worth. That is connected to Wabi Sabi. That's connected to why technology should not be used for anything that should only be used for things that you will or cannot do. That's why technology is not going to take your job if you're doing your job. That's why technology is this golden ticket opportunity for us. Because for me, when I do my keynotes, when you have me as a business coach, even in my writing, you'll hear my language, which I often curse, which I'm trying not to do on here. You'll see my hands flail all over the place because I'm originally from South Jersey. Shout out to the Jersey Shore. And how I'll stutter over my languages sometimes and talk too fast when I get too excited. AI and all the different platforms and technologies cannot duplicate that, because a lot of us, those of us that frankly will not make it, we're trying to shave off the rough edges. We're trying to glaze over the cracks. That weird, idiosyncratic, unusual parts that make us, that got us into this damn business in the first place as independent creators. If we're not careful, we can use technology to rub off those corners. And suddenly we're that IKEA tea set. So when it comes to technology, we have to understand it's about using it to do the things that we're not willing or able to do. It's about us not worrying about it taking our jobs but using it as a mirror to realize we might not actually be doing our jobs. And finally, it's the biggest opportunity that we have to show up more in our humanity. And any technology that we use should be used to magnify our humanity, not the other way around. Thank you.